Everyone, for today's lesson, we are going to learn about translations, which is our very first lesson of Unit 2. Unit 2 is called Rigid Transformations. When you think of the word rigid, I want you to think about something that is moving but not necessarily changing its size. It's not getting smaller, it's not getting any bigger, it's just staying where it's at. But it's transforming, which means change. So a rigid transformation means that it stays the way that it is and it's just moving. Maybe it's flip-flopping, maybe it's rotating, but it's staying the same. So that is a rigid transformation. And there are 3 different types of rigid transformations that we will be exploring in this unit. The first one is translations. So for today's lesson, I need you to make sure that you have the following materials. I need you to have all of your cutouts ready to go. I need you to have a glue stick and something to write with. And if it is possible, try to have some highlighters for color and emphasis in today's lesson. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our I can statement. So our learning target for today's lesson is for you to be able to say, and that is our orange I can statement. And we're going to glue that right at the very top of our lesson. So I'm going to glue that right in. And our I can statement is for you to be able to say by the end of this lesson, I can translate a figure. So translation, you guys are translating as we are talking right now. That is where you are going from one language to another language. We're kind of like moving or sliding. The meaning of the words are not changing, but the words that are being spoken are going to be different. So I can translate a figure on a coordinate plane. So we'll be working with ordered pairs and appropriately, so this should be appropriately, label the image and pre-image. Notice the word pre right here, that means to come before. And I can write the rule for translating a figure. So writing a rule is going to be a skill that you will need to be able to do. So a skill, like a rule, tells you what to do. Like we follow rules in school all the time. So those are our I can statements. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to define or talk about rigid transformations. And there are 3 types of rigid transformations. So there are 3 types of rigid transformations. The first one, which is what our lesson is about today, is called translations. And a translation happens whenever you slide or shift your figure left, right, up, or down. So that is called a translation. It's where you slide a figure left, right, up, or down. And that is what today's topic is all about today. Today we are learning about translations. The other types are, number 2, a reflection. A reflection happens whenever you flip a figure across a line of reflection, like mirroring it across an actual line. So translations, reflections, and the last one is rotations. Rotations are where you turn a figure. So flip is where you would flip it, and turn would mean that you would turn it around so many degrees, around a center of rotation. But like I said, today's lesson is all about translations today. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about some notation and vocabulary. So if you wouldn't mind taking out this cutout right here, This is a cutout that has rigid transformations, non-rigid transformations, pre-image, and image that are being defined. Please go ahead and take out your glue stick, and we are going to leave a little bit of space because I'm going to define one more word. And we're going to put this down here. So there are 3 different types of transformation. So we've talked about those, but let's make sure that we're all on the same page about what the word transformation means. Transformation means that you move or change a figure in some way to produce a new figure. Called an image. So a transformation means that you are going to move or change a figure in some way to produce a new figure. And the new figure is called image. So your new figure will be called an image. So what I have here is our vocabulary. Rigid transformations. And once again, a rigid means that it stays the way that it is. It doesn't get smaller, it doesn't get bigger, it just stays the way that it is, and it's just being moved. Slid left, right, up, down, rotated, flipped, but it is not being changed in shape or size. So it is a figure that changes position or orientation, but the size and shape stays the same. Size and shape stay the same. There are 3 different types of rigid transformations. The first one is a rotation, the second one is a reflection, the third one is translation. So as you can see right here, a rotation is where you're rotating a figure around a certain point and it lands in a new position, and rotating it back the other way will land where you started. So that is called a rotation or a turn. The next one is a reflection. You're going to be reflecting figures across a mirror line. So we would call this like a line of reflection or a mirror line. And you should see a reflection across that line. And a translation is where you slide a figure one way or another way. There are always 2 images. There's always the image that you started with and the image that you end with. So an image that you start with, an image that you end with. Image that you start with, image that you end with. When it comes to notation, we would always have 2 different things. So we would label, like if I were to talk about triangle, A, B, C, and watch it change to something that is different. The size and shape will remain the same, but to show that it's just the same picture that has been moved, we would label A, B, and C with these apostrophes. And those apostrophes indicate that we have ourselves something that has changed. So what we started with, this is known as a pre-image. Where we end is called the image. And so these are apostrophes. They're not exponents, they are apostrophes. The next is called a non-rigid transformation. So non-rigid transformation means that it's still a transformation, but it's not rigid, which means that it's a transformation where only the shape stays the same. But the size changes. So if you look at this picture, this is an image of a triangle and it changes to something that's a lot smaller. This is by a scale factor of 1/2, which means that this image is, this is, should be pre-image, and this is image. Sorry about that, guys. So this is on a scale factor of 1/2, excuse me. And if you look, this picture, this triangle changed to be a lot smaller, so it's half the size. This is called a dilation. And we will talk about dilations a little bit later in this unit. So this is called a dilation. Think about dilating, like your pupils of your eyes get bigger and smaller depending on how much light is in your eyes. The notation is still going to be the same. Like if we were to talk about triangle ABC and talk about it changing, the shape stays the same, but the size changes, you would still label the same exact way. But the difference is that this is going to be a lot smaller than this one, or maybe vice versa. It got a lot bigger. We call those reductions and enlargements. Once again, we're going to learn about that a little bit later in this unit. The next vocab word is pre-image. Pre-image is the original figure. And the way that we label an original figure is we just label the points, like this is triangle ABC, just like normal. So no apostrophes. No apostrophes is the original image. So that's what we have right here, the original image. And then it slides or moves positions and it becomes an image. So remember that pre-image is what comes before. Pre-image comes before. So I'm going to write before or first. So pre-image means what came before or what comes first. And what we're used to is just identifying or naming a shape without apostrophes. Then it changes and we create a new figure. And when we label it, it's the new figure that we are identifying after a transformation. And so after this transformation, we would label this A prime, B prime, C prime. You would have apostrophes there. This apostrophe means that it comes second. This is the second triangle ABC that we are working with, and you would write it with all of these apostrophes, indicating that a change occurred with A, B, and C. So please note that the apostrophe represents a word, and it represents the word prime. So for example, let's say that I have the word, or I have P with an apostrophe. We would call that P prime. P prime. So this would be triangle ABC, and down here we would call it triangle A prime, B prime, C prime. So this is triangle A prime, B prime, C prime. All right, let's go ahead and flip the page, and this time around we're going to talk about translations. And when it comes to translation, a translation, which I already talked about it a little bit, but a translation is a special type of transformation, special type of rigid transformation. And that rigid transformation is a slide or shift of every point that didn't turn out very nicely. It's because of my glue on the other side. So that is every point. So it's a slide or shift of every point in the figure. The same distance in the same direction. So a translation is where you're going to move every single point in the figure the same distance in the same direction. So same distance, same direction. And so we're going to be moving it left or right, up or down, depending on what our rule is going to be. So just know that X values, they will be moved left or right. It just depends on if you see subtraction or addition. And Y values, they will be moved up or down, depending on if you see an addition sign or if you see a subtraction sign. So this is something I want you guys to please make sure that you study, that we will be working with X's and Y values because all of our values are going to be in a coordinate plane. So what I would like you to do right now is please go ahead and take out our yellow picture. And in our yellow picture, we're going to glue it. And we are going to describe here we go. Sometimes my lights go out in my classroom when I'm creating these videos, so don't mind that. So we have coordinate notation for a translation. You can describe a translation by the following rule. This is called a rule. And it's a certain notation where it says X, Y, and I'll zoom in really quick so you can see this. This is known as a rule. And the way that we read this is it says that X, Y, which is our ordered pairs, changes into, so this arrow right here has meaning. And what this arrow means is it means the word changes into. Or the words changes into. So our ordered pairs are going to be changing into. All values of X are being added by some A value, and all values of Y are being added by some B value. So if we were to look at our picture that is given to us, in this picture, what you see here is that we have figure number 1. This figure number 1 started in this spot, and then we shifted all of our points to the right and then up to create another picture, another image. So this is our pre-image. And over here is our image. So we moved all ordered pairs to the right and up. So it says in this picture, in this rule, we translated X plus A and Y plus B, in which it shows that each ordered pair in our figure 1 was translated to the right A units and then up B units. Notice that we have X plus A and Y plus B. So whenever you see a plus sign next to an X, that means you're going to go to the right. And if you see a plus sign next to a Y, that means you're going to go up. If you had seen our rule being XY changes into X minus A and Y minus B, that means that every single point will go to the left and down. So whenever you see A minus sign next to an X, that indicates that you go to the left, and a minus sign next to the Y, that means that you're going to go down. This is something that I want you guys to please make sure that you know and study. This is definitely something that will be on a quiz or a test, and certainly your homework. So let me go ahead and give you a few examples. So if I were to give you an example where it says write a rule for moving all ordered pairs to the right 3 units and down 4 units, what that would look like is this. Writing a rule always starts with X, comma, Y, because these are your ordered pairs. This is always the first thing that we write down. Then it changes into, if I'm going to the right, that means all values of X will be increased by 3, so add 3, comma, down 4. Down means minus, so all values of Y will be subtracted by 4, and this is your rule. And your answer. So now the question is, if you were to use XY changes into X plus 3 and Y minus 4, if you were to use that, what would, my letter A is, what is the image of an ordered pair, we'll call it W, starting off at 2, 5. So using this rule, what this means is that I am going to take my 2, 5, and I'm going to add 3 to 2, and I'm going to subtract 4 from 5. So the way that we would write this is it's W, starts off at 2, 5, and it changes into W prime. And what you do is my X value starts off being 2, and then I'm going to add 3 to it. My Y value starts off being 5, and now I'm going to subtract 4 to it. Simplifying my answer, W prime is going to be 5, 1. That would be the new location of W, and because it's a new location of W, we call it W prime. So this is how you would use a rule. That's working with our rule going backwards. Working with our rule going forward. Now we're going to use our rule going backwards. So this is if you want to find an image. So remember that we always start with the pre-image and then use a rule to find an image. Letter B is going to ask you, what is the pre-image? If I told you that R prime was -1, 7. So if you're asked to find the pre-image, that means that R, what I had with R, was some XY. And what I did is I said R prime was X plus 3 and Y minus 4. And somehow it equaled R prime equals -1, 7. That's what happened. So to go backwards, we're actually going to use the opposite of the rule. So whenever you are asked to find the pre-image and we want to go backwards, what you're going to do is you're going to change the rule using the opposite signs. So if the rule starts off at x plus 3 and y minus 4, to go from r prime, which is negative 1, 7, I am going to go backwards and find r by taking my x value, which is negative 1, and subtracting 3 instead of adding 3. And I'm going to take 7. Instead of subtracting 4, I'm going to add 4. And what we're going to find is that r is located at negative 4, 11. And you can try it. If you go negative 4 plus 3, do you get negative 1? Yes. And if you go 11 minus 4, do you get 7? Yes. So in order to go from your pre-image, or in order for you to find your pre-image given an image, you work with the signs, or you work with the rule backwards. So you change the rule using opposite signs. We're going to be working with this a little bit more in class, but I just wanted to provide you guys with a few examples. That is the end of today's lesson. If you have any questions over anything that I talked about, please feel free to email me. Otherwise, I hope you have an awesome day.